All right, if you're looking to score a deal on equipment for your home gym, you are in luck. Jake from Garage Gym Experiment is back today to help us navigate the confusion around what's on sale, what's a good deal, and what not to even waste your money on this year. Welcome back, Jake.
Thanks for having me.
Like I said, you were on last year, episode number 88. We talked about the deals that were on sale this time of year. And in episode 74, we actually went through what should our clients, what should the person listening even consider if they're going to try to build out their own space. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting up your own home gym, definitely go back and listen to episode number 74. Tons of good stuff in there. But actually, since I talked to you last, Jake, you started your own podcast, and I think some things may have changed with your business. So I'm just curious how your podcast is going and just what's going on in general.
Yeah, so started the podcast about a year. Have been pretty consistent with that over the past every week. So we've released at least one podcast every week, numerous most weeks. We have a weekly show where we go over what's going on in the industry just with new equipment. We have survey results that we go over each week. So if you're someone that's home gym geek, you're likely listening to the podcast. And then we also interview a lot of the entrepreneurs and then just general avid consumers within the space, primarily more equipment wise, talking about that side of things. But yeah, it's been a blast. It's probably my favorite part of the job, just like sitting down and talking with people. I'm sure like you're similar, just like doing it every week is still a grind, but it's definitely, you learn a lot doing it, and yeah, it's fun to do. The big thing with our business though or the business, I should say, is we're launching a conference called Home Gym Con in April of next spring in Indiana. So that's the top project right now, but we have a good amount of vendors signed up. Think a lot of the ticket sales are going to happen closer to time, but that's what I'm working on right now. Just create a conference to get the community together to meet each other, and then also check out a ton of equipment. There'll be a lot of vendors, and then we'll be bringing in lots of equipment for people to play with. The idea of like, it can be tough to pull the trigger on an expensive piece of equipment that you may have never seen in person or touched. So I think that's another benefit to something like this.
That's really cool, man. Where can people go to find out more about that?
Oh, right now it's simply just garagegymexperiment.com/home gymcon. We have ticket options and just some more general information about the conference, and then the vendors that have signed up so far. Like I said, still quite a bit of planning to do, but if you want to get a better gist of what's going on with that, you can go there.
That's cool. I think I also noticed on your website there was a form where people could fill out to have you consult with them on their own garage gym. Is that a thing too, or did I read that wrong?
Yeah, but that's just kind of general gist of contacting Garage Gym Experiment. I think there's a more formal home gym consultation form on the website, but really you can ask your questions via DM or through the contact us form, or you have questions about. Really, not too many people go to it, but it's basically free advice.
Oh,
Just
cool.
if you need help with anything, just let me know. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I feel like there's been this trend and like at least the content that Instagram is showing me since I follow a lot of garage gym accounts, it's just like all these people are getting creative with like different pieces of equipment that can be repurposed to do different things. What's like the best DIY hack you've seen out there with repurposing equipment lately?
Yeah, so Instagram does love those hacks. They typically do pretty good within the algorithm. So yeah, those are probably the most popular ones that you're seeing. I think the best hacks that I've seen are people using foam rollers, not foam rollers, but just like
Pads?
rollers, leg rollers that you can attach to the rack. I've seen a lot of people use them for a DIY-ish GHD. So you get your feet there, put a bench around there, and you can do it as a GHD. There's another one where I've seen someone, you put your hip on the leg roller and you put it over, you reach over and grab like a weight pen and use a band to do a reverse hyper. So there's a lot of creative ways that people are using leg rollers.
Yeah.
My buddy Kyle, he Kaizen DIY gym, he actually did a DIY project on jammer arms, and it has the ability to go multi-directional, whereas traditional jammer arms just go up and down. He used whatever sort of equipment to make them go side to side. You can do flies, and it's just not a single direction like you typically see. And he actually like partnered with a company to sell them. So there's definitely other like examples of like people within the home gym space making little hacks and then like selling them or partnering with a company to sell them. So that's definitely a cool trend that I've seen within the
That's
past couple of years.
Yeah, that's really cool. Little businesses being born. I feel like
Yeah.
AbMat is like making a real push right now with their equipment that is really different. I have an AbMat pad that I use for hip thrust, but they're just like blasting. They're spending a lot of money on advertising, obviously, but they've got some really cool ideas for stuff that I never thought about before. If you're a home gymmer, definitely check out AbMat's website. They're not sponsoring this, but I think they're a pretty good, solid company.
Yeah, they're the perfect example of a company that's working with the community to like produce these unique pieces of equipment that solve like relatively minor problems, but
Yeah. Like
they're
I saw they had
still helping.
something like a rubber ball that you can put on the end of your barbell to turn it into a landmine attachment without having to get out a plate and get out that big clunky metal thing that you might drop on your foot. So just little stuff like that. All right. Before we get into the
Exactly.
deals, let's just recap for somebody listening to this in case they're not going to go back and listen to episode number 74 where we talked about everything. What are the main priorities if somebody's starting from scratch, transitioning from either a CrossFit gym to a home gym or transitioning from going to Planet Fitness to a home gym? Kind of what are the big rocks that we need to start thinking about with our shopping list?
Yeah. So I think number one is you need to figure out whether or not you want to go all in on a home gym. I think there's whether you go to a CrossFit gym or Planet Fitness, there's always a benefit to having some pieces of equipment so you can at least split your time or get a workout in when you can't make it to the gym. So I think like the idea is basically a piece or two at a time. You want to just kind of start small and grow as you end up using it more often. So I personally went all in on the home gym, obviously, because I found myself using it all the time. So I think you just have to number one, figure out if you're going to be a full-time home gymmer or not, and then make your purchases based off of that. Regardless, I think most people should start with something like a barbell and bumper plates. So with a barbell and some plates, you can do hundreds of different exercises, and you can do that, and it's a way to start for under probably you can get a good bar and plates for under 750-ish or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But deadlift, clean, squat, you can do all that with some barbell and bumper plates. Next up, I would say probably either a bench or a rack. Those are kind of three or four. But once you have a barbell, plates, bench, and a rack, you can pretty much do just about anything, especially with some creativity. And then I would build from there based off just simply what you think you'll use the most or what complements your training the best.
Yeah, maybe getting into some dumbbells, adjustable set of dumbbells or some hex dumbbells and some bands and things like that. And we talked a lot in the last episode about planning to make sure you know where you're going to do this too. Like considerations like what's the ceiling height you have to work with, what's the square footage you have to work with. And when you start down this road of building out your garage gym, know that you're going to have to test it out for a while to make sure that where you put stuff is functionally going to work for you. Your squat rack might look great over on that one wall, but it might be really hard to get to the end of the barbell to put the plates on, and it's just not worth it. So don't put this stuff down with metaphorical glue the first time you set it up. Be willing to try it out for a few weeks and be flexible. But the same thing goes with buying equipment. See what you can get by without having it before you just feel like you have to go on Rogue or something like that and drop $5,000 just because they have a package deal. But I think those are everything you just said there is good advice. One thing I would throw into there is like, since it's important to build this thing from the bottom up, think about what you're going to do for your flooring. also, because it's a hassle to, I think last time we talked, you were just changing out the floor in your gym maybe and had to take everything out and put it all back in or something like that. So think about your floor when you're starting out. Yeah, no, it's some people don't think about it. Like my room already has a floor in it, but yeah, but that might not be what you want for a gym floor, especially if you have other people living in the house. All right, let's get into what everybody wants to know who is thinking about snatching up some gear this holiday season. We're putting this episode out Thanksgiving week, so everybody knows, even though stuff's been on sale all month, really, that companies tend to ramp things up the week that this is coming out. So what have you seen out there that looks like a decent deal that people should go check out? And I will say that I'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes for this episode.
So number one, I don't know specifically what the sales will be. Most companies keep them pretty tight to their hips, but it'll likely be that, like you mentioned, there are sales all month, but the sales will likely be the best that last week from Black Friday through Cyber Monday. Right now, we're seeing things like deals on just about everything. However, the discounts only 5 to 10%. So there's nothing too crazy. I think one company right now that has good deals, and like you said, they might get even better if you're just looking for a really budget friendly option. True Grit, they have, for example, they have an air bike that's only $449 right now. Cheaper dumbbells, pretty decently priced power racks, and then what usually gets expensive is the shipping. However, if you spend more than $5.99, which if you really want to load up, they're doing free shipping on orders $5.99 or above. So you could get a lot from there. I imagine if you want to stick with Rogue, like a lot of people just want Rogue, don't want anything else. I would say Rogue deals are average to below average. They don't have very many sales at all throughout the year. So if you want Rogue, now is the time to buy. Rep Fitness, they're probably right behind Rogue right now as the most popular equipment supplier for home gyms. They are quite a bit more affordable than Rogue with a lot of their pieces of equipment. They've been having flash deals all month. And if I had to predict, most of those flash sales will come back at the end of the month. So Rep will definitely be somebody that you'd want to consider. They have almost Rogue quality racks and likely better cable attachments than Rogue. I would say so, at least. Good priced dumbbells, good priced. They have the go-to benches. Rep definitely has a reputation for having the best value benches in the industry. I really can't go wrong with purchasing a full gym from Rep. Titan's supposed to have some good deals. I would say right now, if you're looking to start a home gym from scratch and you want a really budget-friendly option, like those package deals you mentioned, the Strength Depot has probably the best package deals right now. And then their sales don't look huge, but they have pretty good prices to begin with. So if you start comparing the prices to what other companies are, then you might want to just go with something from the Strength Depot after realizing that. They do have a good deal on dumbbells right now. If you want a 5 through 50 set, I want to say it's $8.99, but you also get a full storage rack, which definitely helps a ton. If you're going to get a 5 through 50 set, you probably want somewhere to store those dumbbells rather than just like on the side of your gym. So that's probably the best dumbbell deal I've seen in a long time.
These are the rubber hex dumbbells.
Like PRX has. Correct. Yeah. Similar to Rogue, like PRX is a company that doesn't typically have a lot of sales throughout the year. They're known for their folding racks. So now would be the best time to buy from PRX. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. I don't think there's anything like any like huge steals, but it's still the best time of the year to buy for your gym right now.
Yeah, I think the key is to somebody listening to this, write down the names of those companies that Jake just said. leave the tabs for those websites open in your phone and check them every day. Because the way a lot of these companies work is they'll allot a certain quantity of whatever the thing is that's going to be like the hot deal. And they're like, boom, we're going to have 500 benches for $100 off. And when they're gone, so you have to keep an eye out. But these are a lot of the same brands that we talked about last year, actually. And yeah, that's the best way to do it, really, is to think about what you want based on the priorities we talked about earlier. And then, but you got to be like ready to buy when the time comes. You mentioned the companies like Rep and Titan and Strength Depot and PRX and Rogue. People will probably see, if you just go on and look at power racks. I'm going to look at a 4x4 power rack, and you start seeing, man, there's a big price difference between these different companies. What are and you've played with all of this stuff. If somebody who's like hesitant, man, I don't know, like this thing is $200 cheaper. What's wrong with it? What are some of the like quality differences between some of the cheaper equipment and some of the stuff like people expect from Rogue?
So I would say the number one thing in terms of squat racks is the post size. The standard premium size, I would say, is a 3x3 with a 3x3 inch posts with either 1 inch or 5-inch holes. Those are going to give you the racks that are the most stout, and you'll be able to like really load it up with attachments. So if you want something like a dip attachment, a landmine, lap pull down tower, while you can get those with the other ones, these are going to be the higher quality, and it's going to be a bit more stout. Like you'd be able to put something like jammer arms, or just about, it's more for the versatility. The next step down is like the 2x2 posts, or somewhere in between 2x2 and 3x3. Those are still going to get the job done for just about everybody. They're, like I said, they won't be as versatile, and they will still include like weight limits of 1,000 pounds. You can get a power rack for $350 that will absolutely do the job for even the strongest people in the world. Maybe not the strongest people in the world, but if you're like really close.
Which I don't know if the strongest person in the world is listening to this episode. I just don't know.
That's why I mention it. I personally would feel fine in something like a Rep PR 1100 power rack, which is, I want to say, 40% cheaper than just a base, just one step higher. So like this, like it's still steel, and it's still going to be very strong. It has the potential to last 20 years in your garage if you take good care of it.
Yeah.
But if you can afford a nice rack, there's nothing quite like it. So
if you guys are listening to the audio version of this, he's got this like amazing looking power rack in the background right behind him.
I'll just mention, like, as you're building out a home gym, just keep in mind that most of it you have the ability to sell it a couple years later, likely for more than probably 60 to 75%. So if you can't afford a big monster Rogue rack right now, but you want it one day, I suggest not to wait. Just go ahead and get a cheaper option, get the home gym going, and then upgrade as you can later. I think there's plenty of value in still having a budget set up.
Yeah.
As opposed to waiting until you can get the very best.
But like, I think like we're all trained right now just to look on Amazon for anything we want to buy. It's ridiculous. But I would just really encourage people to kind of weigh your options and really think about things before you get on Amazon to buy legitimate workout equipment. Like let's say you want a place to do pull-ups. You get on Amazon, search pull-up bar. You see the one that goes on your door frame. You see the one that is kind of like a little stand where you can also kind of work your abs on. The thing about all those pieces of equipment is, yes, they're going to be cheaper, but since they're going to be shipped to you from Amazon, they're probably going to be really thin metal, and they're going to have none of the flexibility to add to in the future. Jake's talking about with a power rack where you can actually do squats in it. It has a place already to do pull-ups on it. It has the ability to put the dip attachment on. So think about flexibility too, instead of just what is the cheapest thing I can buy in this moment. Plus some of that stuff is really shady as far as like safety. It's super flimsy stuff. You agree with all that?
Right. Yeah. If you have no idea what you're if you have no idea what you're looking for and you go on Amazon, you could come up with something pretty terrible. I would say, like, in general, if you understand what's out there, then shopping on Amazon is fine. But you're not going to save too much more than just going to Titan, where Titan or Bells of Steel or even Rep, and buying higher quality. And if something goes wrong, you have the ability to deal with someone's customer service.
Right.
Whereas if you buy from some random company on Amazon, who knows what you're going to have to go through.
I've
And all
also
of these companies,
there's shady stuff out there that's not doesn't have to do with Amazon, but you just look at the deal and you're like, that seems too good to be true. And I've had clients buy those things without talking to me, and they never even got the thing shipped from China. That it was a big ripoff.
right? Yeah.
Have
And also just, yeah, I
oh,
was
go
just
ahead.
before we go on, before we go on, I was just going to say all of these other companies have warranties and like things behind it. So if for whatever reason something does go wrong, you'd be taken care of. And I will say I have never really had a big issue with ordering from one of these larger companies, or even just from a company's website as opposed to Amazon. So yeah.
Yeah. The shipping is general. It's not going to be like 2 day like Amazon Prime, but all these companies that we're talking about are legitimate. Make sure when you're looking online and you're searching for equipment, make sure it's a company that you've actually heard of, especially if you're new to this, because last thing you want to do is start working out with shady equipment at home. Speaking of shady equipment, what are some things that people think they need to buy that they probably don't? Like, maybe in your polls you've rooted out things that people regret buying. Like for us, it's probably a GHD for the house. Not that we don't find ways to use it sometimes, but it takes up a ton of space. It was relatively expensive, and yeah, it's just we probably didn't need that.
Yeah, I think large pieces of equipment that only accomplish a single thing are that's the number one thing that, unless you truly know that's what you want, you should probably avoid. Like I used to have a GHD too, and it takes up such a big footprint that I ended up selling it. Sometimes I miss it, but in general, I probably could have gone without it. I think gimmicks, if you buy like little arm blasters or even grips, for example, I think a lot of it's personal preference, but I would use grips. I'd like them the first couple times I use them and then never use them ever again.
You talking about fat
Just
grip?
Yeah, stuff like that. There's 100 of them now.
Yeah.
There's 100 different.
So file those under waste of money for the most part.
Yeah, I would say loadable dumbbells. So not adjustable, but loadable. The ones that they're just, you hold the handle and you put Olympic weights on either side. Uh, those typically don't get used. And then, like, just off of that, I would say anything that takes a ton of time to set up. So if you have to, if you find yourself needing to set up some sort of station for it every single time, it's likely that you'll just end up not doing it over the years. So yeah.
I have our Hex dumbbells here at the house only go up to 75 pounds. So I got a set of loadable dumbbells to use for rows. And you're exactly right, man. I just think to myself,
Just
okay, dumbbell rows are programmed. I could do seated cable rows because it's much easier to select the weight on that than to load up those adjustable dumbbells. So you're totally right on that.
yeah.
Speaking of
Yeah.
adjustable dumbbells, when COVID happened, all these companies started coming out of the woodworks with new designs and different kind of adjustable dumbbells with everybody working out at home. We bought a set to take with us in our camper, and they only select in 10-pound increments, something we didn't realize when we bought them. And I've just found them to be weird. Like the balance doesn't feel right. They serve the purpose for when we're traveling, but have you played with any of these other adjustable dumbbells? Which ones feel the most normal and which ones seem like a good deal?
Yeah. So number one, I would say that I don't think anyone's absolutely nailed the adjustable dumbbell yet. There's still work to be done in that category. The best ones that I've used are the Nuabells. So there's a few issues. Like you said, they only go up to, I think, 75 or 80. You can't drop them either, or you're not recommended to drop them. Some like plastic portions, and yeah, they're solid. And they're the 5 through 80 Dumbbells are quite a bit cheaper than 5 through 80 set of hex dumbbells and take up like no space. So I would still recommend them, but if you want to be able to drop them, they're not going to be the right option for you. Like you couldn't just use them in a CrossFit workout, for example, unless you like were really careful.
Dropping dumbbell snatch from overhead.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of other ones that are relatively close, but they're either too bulky or they're too fragile or the handles not knurled. There's things like that. While I would say adjustable dumbbells are still probably a better option for most, not perfect.
Yeah, they're also annoying too if you're ever doing a giant set of something or superset. And like the adjustables we bought, they have to be sitting in the base to adjust the weight. That's not always convenient.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. So I think about that if you're thinking about adjustable dumbbells. It might be smarter just to build your collection slowly with some rubber hex dumbbells. And even if you can't get every weight that you want right now, just build slowly over time. They take up a little more space, but if you have a rack that goes up with them, then it's something that you can deal with versus them being spread out all over the floor. I noticed a blog on let's talk about cardio equipment real quick because it's getting cold. Not everybody wants to be out running on the streets. I noticed a blog on your article, and an article on your blog about the difference between electric treadmills and the self-powered ones, like the Trueform runner. I've never actually gotten to try one of the Trueforms that Blakely has, but what are the main differences, and which one do you recommend overall for the average person?
Yeah, so it's, again, I would say it's a toss-up as to which one's a better option for you. With the ones, they're better option for like long distance running, walking up an incline. But you have to keep in mind that you have to be near a plug. They're more likely to go out over time. And they have an engine. They're a little cheaper though than most annuals. So I would say if you're somebody that wants to be able to run long distance, you'd go with as the biggest differentiator. I would say go with something like an electric, whereas manual like a Salt Runner or Trueform, True Grit has one now. There's a number of them. Woodway. So those are great for like sprint workouts, going fast, going slow. You can self adjust your speed, as with the manual you can change it. So great for stuff like that. It's easy to hop on, hop off, as opposed to like you have to turn it on plus press buttons.
That could be a good thing or a bad thing though, that it's easy to hop on and off of them. You could quit really easily. I've done enough.
No doubt. And that's actually like something I want to bring up too, just with the manual aspect. Like you have to keep it going the whole time, as opposed to like with a manual one, you just are on autopilot. Like you're doing what the speed tells you to do, where it's easier to like just slow down. And it like truly is hard to run a long distance on something like a Trueform, where you have to self-propel it. But it's as opposed to having a motor, you have the ability to basically have zero maintenance. I've had an Assault Runner for a couple of years, haven't ever touched it. And it's also something like my garage is really warm in the summer and then really cold in the winter. That might be something I'm worried about with something with a motor, but with this, I'm not. I personally would prefer this. My buddy who wrote the article who also works out in a basement, would prefer an electric one because he trains long distance runs. So it's really just one of those things where it's like there's no right answer.
Yeah. What do you feel differently, like from a muscular activation endurance standpoint between the two?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. I think it's more of like it is way easy. Like I've had really good sprint workouts on a manual one, whereas it is very hard to do that without loading the machine on an electric one.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're into like CrossFit or just like general HIIT workouts, it's better to have something like that. Those sorts of workouts.
It'd be hard to do sprints on a electric treadmill because you got one hand
You
on
have
the
to
button
like,
trying to beep, 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 and you're actually trying to get up to a sprint speed. Yeah, that does seem awkward. And to get in to slow down. Also, I imagine like propelling the belt requires a lot more hamstring work versus an electric treadmill where you really can just kind of lift your foot, lift your leg up off the ground. The belt is doing its own work on its own. I imagine you actually are doing more work on the manual treadmill. How much are those now?
It is. That's another thing. If you want to go with one of the top brands, they're going to be like double of like a Soul F80 or Nordic Track. They're quite a bit more. So between 3,000 and 4,000 for a manual. But like I said, it's a lot. But it's never going to break down and
probably holds its value pretty well.
Really long time. Yeah, it should.
Anybody listening to this? About a year ago, we got it's called like a walking pad, I guess. We got it on Amazon. It's made by a company called Superfit. There's tons of them out there. And we just got it to keep in the office for getting some steps in when it's super cold outside. But it was like $330 at the time. I think they've gone up a little bit, but let me be clear. It's not a substantial treadmill. It's narrow. You have to be focused when you're on it. It's great for walking, but in a pinch, like you can ramp it up to 7.5 miles an hour, I think, which is an 8-minute mile. So there are cheaper options, and you could actually rig this up so you slide it under your desk and just get some activity in when you're working if you have a standing desk. And maybe Amazon's going to have some of those on sale in the week leading up to Thanksgiving here. Cool. I think we hit on a lot of stuff. I'm going to put the names of these companies in the show notes. But like I said, there is no like secret to doing this. You need to think about what you need for your space, and you need to be ready to pounce when you see a deal pop up. And one thing Jake pointed out that I want to harp on again is watch out for the shipping deals too, because something that you pay full price on or close to full price, but you save the shipping could be like $50, $70, $100 because weights are expensive. They're heavy. Barbells are heavy and it's expensive to ship heavy stuff. Okay, Jake, tell everybody what the best way to find you, connect with you, and start following your content so they can be up to date on everything is.
Yeah, probably most active on Instagram, just at Garage Gym Experiment. You can also check out our website, garagegymexperiment.com.
Sounds good, man. Thanks again for your time. Hope you get some good stuff for Christmas.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thanks, man.